In the days that followed, a new protocol was established. The barriers were redesigned, not to cage the Crixus, but to create a mutual boundary with gates that could be opened for controlled interaction. Ilara's communication system was expanded, creating the foundation for greater understanding between species. And in a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier, the Silurian Collective officially recognized the Crixus as a sentient species with territorial rights, the first non-humanoid, non-technological species to receive such recognition in galactic law. As Ilara recorded her final research notes, Selena and her cubs visited the outpost's perimeter. The cubs had grown noticeably in just these few weeks, their intelligence blossoming under their mother's guidance. Selena made a series of marks in the soil, symbols that Ilara now recognized easily. Nivu beginning. Yes, Ilara agreed, knowing that Selena understood. A new beginning for all of us. The universe, Ilara reflected, was full of intelligence in forms humans and other spacefaring species had never imagined. And sometimes, it took a human's uniquely stubborn compassion to bridge the gap between the misunderstood and those who feared them. A small reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or knowledge, but the willingness to see potential where others saw only threat. As night fell on Epsilon 9, the stars shone down on two intelligent species, beginning a conversation millennia overdue, while a human xenobiologist smiled at the knowledge that sometimes second thoughts could change the course of history. I think she understands the barrier's purpose now, Ilara told Garrus, who stood guard nearby, his hand never far from his weapon. She didn't before. To the Crixus, it was just an impassable wall that appeared one day, cutting off their territory. Can she understand that the Silurians will essentially nuke the entire region if her pack attacks? Garrus asked skeptically. In response, Selena raised a clawed limb and began making marks on her screen, symbols that the computer translated based on their established communication protocol. Protect QBS. Yes, Ilara confirmed. We want to protect everyone. Your cubs. Your pack. The Silurians. Selena considered this, her scales shifting through thoughtful colors. Then, others and Gurai. Long memory. She's saying her pack remembers how they were driven off their territory. Ilara translated. They've been waiting for a chance to reclaim it. That's troublingly sophisticated thinking for what we thought were simple predators, Garrus observed. Another alarm blared. The barrier was failing faster than predicted. They had minutes, not hours. Ilara made a decision. I'm releasing her. Ilara? No. But she had already initiated the enclosure's opening sequence. Selena stepped out cautiously, her massive body moving with fluid grace despite her recent injuries. The cubs remained in their enclosure, watching anxiously. Keep the cubs safe, Ilara told Selena, reinforcing the message with their symbolic system. Show your pack another way. Selena approached Ilara slowly. Everyone in the room held their breath, hands moving to weapons. But instead of attacking, the Crixus gently pressed her forehead against Ilara's chest, a gesture of trust. Then she pulled back and made a series of vocalizations that the translator couldn't interpret, but whose meaning was clear from her body language. Wait here. With that, Selena bounded toward the airlock. Ilara quickly programmed it to cycle, allowing the Crixus out into the storm. You realize you've just potentially doomed us all, Ambassador Thelzen said as he entered the laboratory, his color patterns pulsing with fury. Or saved us all, Ilara countered, watching through external cameras as Selena raced through the acid rain, her scaled hide resistant to the corrosive downpour. I'm betting on intelligence recognizing mutual interest. For 30 tense minutes, nothing happened. The barrier continued to fail, segment by segment. Evacuation ships lifted off from the Silurian settlement, carrying the young and the elderly to safety. The orbital platform reported weapons ready, awaiting the ambassador's command. Then, as the final barrier segment flickered and died, the sensors detected movement. Lots of movement. Multiple Crixus approaching, a technician reported, voice tight with fear. At least 20 adults. Prepare orbital strike, Felsen ordered. Wait. Ilara pointed to the external feed. Look. The Crixus pack had emerged from the storm, led by Selena. But instead of charging toward the settlement, they had formed a living wall, their bodies acting as a barrier between the settlement and something else moving through the acidic fog behind them. What are they doing? Garrus asked, bewildered. As the fog cleared momentarily, they saw the answer. A massive herd of Epsilon 9's equivalent of bison. Enormous herbivores displaced by the storm, charging blindly in panic. Without the Crixus line, they would have trampled straight through the vulnerable settlement. They're protecting the settlement, Ilara breathed. Selena understood. She convinced her pack that coexistence is preferable to mutual destruction. The scene outside was chaos. The Crixus worked with astonishing coordination, redirecting the stampeding herd away from the settlement, using vocalizations and strategic positioning to guide the panicked animals. Several Crixus were injured in the process, but the line held. By the time the storm subsided hours later, the danger had passed. The Crixus pack had retreated to the ridge perimeter, where they remained, watchful but not aggressive. In the aftermath, Ilara stood with Ambassador Felsen and Mixval at the edge of the settlement, looking toward the northern ridge where Selena had reunited with her cubs. They could have attacked when the barrier fell, Ilara pointed out. Instead, they saved your people. Intelligence recognizing mutual benefit, Mixval said, echoing Ilara's earlier words. Fascinating. Felsen's colors had shifted to contemplative blue. In all our history, we never truly attempted to understand them. We saw only the threat, never the possibility. He turned to Ilara. Your human perspective has value. Different doesn't always mean dangerous, Ilara said. Sometimes it just means different. An alert sounded from one of the monitoring stations. Garrus moved to check it. We've got a problem. The weather system is shifting. Acid storm coming in, bigger than yesterday's, and the northern ridge barrier is failing. The settlement, Mixval said, his colors paling to alarmed white. If the barrier fails completely, there will be nothing between the Crixus hunting grounds and our people. Ilara looked at Selena and her cubs, then back at the monitor. How many Crixus are out there? Our scans show at least 30 adult specimens, Garrus replied. If they're all as intelligent as Selena, they'll recognize an opportunity, Ilara finished for him. The barrier's been keeping them contained. If it falls, slaughter, Mixval said simply. The ambassador will order immediate evacuation and orbital sterilization of the northern region. Killing all the Crixus, Ilara realized. No, there has to be another way. She turned to Selena, who was watching the proceedings with those intelligent amber eyes. An idea, desperate, possibly insane, began to form in Ilara's mind. What if we could communicate with them? Really communicate? Warn the Crixus pack that such an attack would lead to their extinction. Mixval's colors shifted to skeptical indigo. Even if they understand, why would they care? They are predators. Intelligent predators, Ilara corrected. And intelligence recognizes mutual benefit. She pointed to Selena and her cubs. They're not just killers. They're a family, a society. They can learn, adapt, reason. What are you suggesting? Garrus asked, though his expression suggested he already knew and didn't like it. Ilara took a deep breath. I want to release Selena. The silence that followed was deafening. Absolutely not, Garrus finally said. That's suicide and potentially genocide if you're wrong about her intentions. Not release her blindly, Ilara clarified. I want to establish communication first, then send her back with a message, a warning to her pack. That's assuming a lot, Mixval noted, that she can communicate our intentions to others of her kind, that they would listen, that they possess the concept of mutual destruction. Ilara looked at Selena again. The Crixus had returned to the marks she'd been making, adding to them deliberately, her movements precise. "I think they understand more than we realize," she said quietly. "And I think they've been trying to tell us something all along." As the acid storm gathered strength outside the dome, casting eerie shadows through the laboratory, Ilara made her decision. She would either bridge the gap between species or fail catastrophically. Either way, the fate of two intelligent species and her own life hung in the balance, proving their worth. The storm raged against the research outpost's dome with unprecedented fury. Acid rain fell in sheets, dissolving the native vegetation and eating away at the synthetic barriers that protected the Silurian settlement. In the command center, alarms blared as systems reported multiple failures. Northern barrier down to 42% integrity, a technician reported. At this rate, total failure in 3 hours. Ambassador Thalzin pulsed with colors of rage and fear. "Begin evacuation procedures and contact the orbital platform. I want incendiary protocols prepared." "You can't just burn the northern ridge," Ilara protested. "There's an entire ecosystem there, including the sentient species." "Your sentient species will slaughter my people if that barrier falls," Thalzin countered. "I've humored your research, Dr. Chen, but facing extinction, the collective will protect its own." Ilara glanced at the laboratory feeds, where Selena was watching the proceedings through the surveillance cameras, her amber eyes unnervingly focused. The Crixus had demonstrated an uncanny understanding of the outpost's technology, even manipulating the touchscreens in her enclosure to access different data feeds. "Give me 1 hour," Ilara pleaded. "I've developed a rudimentary communication system with Selena. Let me try to negotiate." "Negotiate?" The ambassador's colors pulsed with incredulous patterns. "With an animal." "With an intelligence different from our own," Ilara corrected, "but no less valid." Mixval, who had been analyzing Selena's markings, stepped forward. "Ambassador, there is merit to Dr. Chen's proposal. The Crixus has created what appears to be a logographic writing system, primitive but structured." Thalzin's tendrils writhed with conflicting emotions. 1 hour, he finally conceded. But evacuation preparations continue. In the laboratory, Ilara worked feverishly, using the symbolic communication system she'd developed with Selena to convey their situation. The Crixus watched intently as Ilara displayed images of the failing barrier, the storm, and the settlement in its path. She named the adult Crixus Selena after the ancient moon goddess, and the cubs Phoebe and Atlas. Naming test subjects was frowned upon in xenobiology, but Ilara had long since abandoned the pretense that she was maintaining scientific detachment. "Good morning," she said as she entered the lab. Selena was already awake, standing at full height in her enclosure. The creature was magnificent, nearly 3 meters long, with a muscular body supported by 6 powerful limbs arranged in a hexapedal configuration. Her scales shimmered with a subtle iridescence that shifted colors with her movements, currently displaying a calm blue-green. Ilara checked the medical readouts. The regenerative therapy had worked better than expected. Selena's wounds were nearly healed. The cubs were thriving too, their energy levels increasing daily. "Let's run some tests, shall we?" Ilara activated the cognitive assessment program she'd developed overnight. A series of puzzles appeared on screens within the enclosures, tests designed to measure problem-solving abilities, memory, and spatial reasoning. What happened next astonished her. Selena approached the screen and, after studying it briefly, began solving the puzzles methodically. Not through trial and error, but with deliberate, calculated movements that suggested not just intelligence, but reasoning. "That's impossible," muttered Dr. Hendrick, one of the junior researchers who'd joined the project. "These are problem-solving paradigms we use for cetaceans and primates. She shouldn't be able to." Selena completed the final puzzle, then turned her amber gaze toward the humans, as if waiting for the next challenge. "She's not just solving them," Ilara said, excitement building in her voice. She's solving them optimally. Look at the path efficiency. The cubs, meanwhile, watched their mother intently, occasionally mimicking her movements, learning. By midday, Ilara had compiled enough data to make a preliminary assessment. The Crixus possessed intelligence comparable to Earth's most cognitive species. They demonstrated tool use, abstract thinking, and perhaps most surprisingly, a form of symbolic communication. Selena had begun arranging objects in her enclosure in patterns that couldn't be coincidental. It's a language, Ilara realized, watching as Selena used her claws to scratch marks into the soft flooring material, or at least a proto-language. As she worked, the lab door opened to admit Garrus, accompanied by its Ilorian scientist named Mixval. Unlike Ambassador Thulzen, Mixval's spore patterns indicated curiosity rather than hostility. "The ambassador doesn't know I'm here," Mixval said by way of greeting, his translator rendering his words with scientific precision. "But your findings are intriguing." Ilara gestured to the screens displaying the test results. "They're not just predators. They're sentient, or very nearly so." Mixval's body pulsed with skeptical colors. "Our histories tell of Crixus breaching our most secure compounds, hunting our ancestors with what seemed like malice. They remember faces, Dr. Chen. They return for specific targets. That sounds like intelligence to me," Ilara pointed out. "Have you ever considered that what you interpreted as malice might have been something else? Territorial defense, perhaps, or retaliation for perceived threats?" The Kylorian scientist moved closer to the enclosure. Selena watched him, her scales shifting to a wary orange. The cubs huddled behind her. "Our ancestors tried to communicate with them thousands of years ago," Mixval admitted. "The attempts ended in bloodshed." "Maybe you were communicating wrong," Ilara suggested. She pointed to the marks Selena had made on the floor. "Look at this. It's structured. Repetitive patterns with variations. Classic indicators of symbolic thinking." Mixval studied the marks, his scientific curiosity evidently overcoming generations of cultural fear. "If you're right, this changes everything we thought we knew about Epsilon 9's evolutionary history." Garrus, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. "It doesn't change the ambassador's deadline. You have 2 days left, Ilara." As if understanding the gravity of the conversation, Selena stepped forward and pressed a clawed limb against the barrier, her eyes fixed on Ilara. Then, deliberately, she turned to her cubs and made a series of movements. A demonstration. The cubs approached different puzzles on their screens and began solving them, mimicking their mother's methodical approach. "She's teaching them," Ilara whispered. "She understands what we're doing, and she's showing us that her cubs can learn." Mixval's colors shifted rapidly, the Hylorian equivalent of astonishment. "This is unexpected." "Dr. Chen," the ambassador said, his translator rendering his spore speech into crisp English, "you have brought abominations into this facility." Ilara straightened, positioning herself between the Tylorian and the sedated Crixus. "I've brought in injured wildlife for study and rehabilitation, Ambassador. Standard xenobiological protocol." "Those creatures," Thulzen said, jabbing a tendril toward the enclosure, "are not wildlife. They are Crixus, apex predators, killers. There are sacred texts dating back millennia warning of their savagery. With respect, Ambassador, every predator species has been feared by someone. On Earth, wolves were hunted nearly to extinction because of superstition, only for us to later discover they were crucial to their ecosystems." The ambassador's colors shifted to a deep indigo, a warning sign. "These are not your Earth wolves, Doctor. Crixus hunt in packs, using tactics that suggest intelligence. They can disable our most advanced security systems. They remember those who wronged them and exact vengeance across generations." Ilara glanced at the mother Crixus, now sleeping peacefully as the regenerative therapy knitted her wounds. The cubs had curled up together, their six-limbed bodies intertwined in sleep. They also care for their young, she observed. They exhibit familial bonds. That suggests emotional complexity, or effective pack behavior, Felsen countered. The collective demands these creatures be euthanized immediately. Ilara felt a surge of anger. Absolutely not. They've done nothing wrong. Their existence is wrong. They are genetic aberrations, leftovers from a time when Epsilon 9 was wild and untamed. So you want to kill them because they don't fit into your ideal of what this planet should be. Ilara shook her head. I won't allow it. Under the Joint Research Agreement, I have authority over biological specimens collected for study. The ambassador's tendrils writhed in what might have been discussed. You humans, always thinking you know better than species who have lived among the stars for millennia. Your compassion is misplaced and dangerous. Perhaps, Ilara admitted, but it's also what makes us human. As if sensing the tension, the adult Crixus stirred, its amber eyes fixing on the Silurian ambassador. A low, rumbling growl filled the lab. Felsen retreated a step. You have 3 days, Dr. Chen. Study your specimens. Then they must be destroyed, or the collective will reconsider our research arrangement entirely. With that, he turned and left, his fungoid body leaving spores of displeasure in his wake. Garrus approached once the ambassador was gone. That could have gone better. Ilara turned back to her patients. The mother Crixus had settled again, but her eyes remained open, watching. Intelligent eyes, Ilara thought. Eyes that understood more than a mere animal should. 3 days to convince an entire species to overcome millennia of fear and prejudice, she said quietly. I've worked with worse deadlines. Garrus looked skeptical. What if the ambassador is right? What if these things are as dangerous as the Silurians believe? Ilara reached into the smaller enclosure, where one of the cubs had pressed its nose against the transparent barrier. Its amber eyes held curiosity rather than fear. Then I'll be the first to admit I was wrong, she said. But I don't think I am. As night fell over Epsilon 9, the storm finally broke. Through the dome of the research outpost, stars became visible, twinkling in patterns unfamiliar to human eyes. In the lab, Ilara made one final check on her patients before retiring to her quarters. The adult Crixus was awake, its 4 eyes following her movements. I'm going to help you, Ilara promised, placing her hand against the barrier. Whatever you are, whatever you've done to make them fear you so much, you deserve a chance. To her astonishment, the Crixus raised one of its 6 limbs and pressed it against the barrier, mirroring her gesture. In that moment, across the divide of species and worlds, a connection was formed, one that would soon shake the foundations of human-Silurian relations and challenge everything both species thought they knew about the nature of intelligence in the cosmos. Understanding the misunderstood. Dawn broke with the arrival of a message from Earth Command. Proceed with CAOCHN. Diplomatic ENCIDNT possible. Research authorized need under HFY 7B. Ilara smiled grimly. Section 7B was the scientific equivalent of don't ask permission, ask forgiveness, a provision in the Joint Research Agreement that protected scientific inquiry even when it conflicted with cultural sensitivities. It wouldn't shield her forever, but it bought her time. Dangerous encounter. The storm on Epsilon 9 intensified, bringing with it sheets of acid rain that pattered against the reinforced dome of the research outpost. Dr. Ilara Chen adjusted her atmospheric suit and checked the seals one final time. The native Isolarians had warned her not to venture out during the storm season, but the energy signature she detected couldn't wait. Something living was out there, and its life signs were fading. Chen, this is a mistake. The voice of Garrus, the outpost's security chief, crackled through her comm. The Isolarians were quite clear. The northern ridge is forbidden territory, even in good weather. Ilara checked her scanner again. 3 life forms, Garrus, 1 adult, weakening. 2 juveniles, I'm not leaving them to die. They're probably just local fauna. Not worth risking your life over. Ilara sealed her helmet with a click. Everything is just local fauna until we study it. That's why we're here. She stepped into the airlock, ignoring Garrus's continued protests. As the chamber cycled, Ilara reviewed what she knew about Epsilon 9's ecosystem. The planet was a joint research venture between humans and the Tylorians, a fungoid species that had achieved spaceflight centuries before humanity. The agreement had been clear. Humans could establish research outposts on the Silurian colony world in exchange for technological assistance, but certain areas were strictly off-limits. The Northern Ridge was one such area. The airlock hissed open, and Ilara stepped into the howling storm. Acid rain sizzled against her suit, leaving streaks of discoloration that the self-healing polymers quickly repaired. Her scanner guided her toward a narrow ravine cutting through the rocky terrain. After 20 minutes of careful navigation through the treacherous landscape, Ilara found what she was looking for. In a sheltered crevice beneath an outcropping of rock lay a massive creature, roughly the size of an earth tiger, but with 6 limbs and a thick, scaled hide. 2 smaller versions of the animal, cubs, presumably, huddled against their mother's side. The adult's breathing was labored, and a deep gash ran along its side, revealing iridescent blue blood that pulsed weakly with bioluminescence. Ilara approached slowly, scanner extended. The creature raised its massive head, revealing 4 eyes that glowed an eerie amber in the dim light. It bared rows of serrated teeth, a low growl emanating from somewhere deep in its chest. "Easy," Ilara murmured, knowing the creature couldn't understand her, but hoping her tone might convey her intentions. "I'm here to help." Her scanner revealed severe internal injuries, likely from a territorial dispute or a fall from the ridge above. Without intervention, the creature would die within hours, leaving its cubs to starve or fall prey to other predators. Ilara activated her comm. "Garrus, I need a medical transport at my location, and prepare the auxiliary research bay. Tell me you didn't find what I think you found." Garrus replied, his voice tight. "What do you think I found?" "A Crixus beast, 6 limbs, bioluminescent blood, mean as hell." Ilara glanced at the creature, which was still watching her intently. "That sounds about right." "Chen, the Silurians consider them demons. They cull any that approach their settlements. There's a reason they're confined to the Northern Ridge. Well, this one is injured and has cubs. I'm bringing them in." The silence that followed spoke volumes. Finally, Garrus said, "The Silurian ambassador will have a fit." "Then we don't tell him," Ilara replied. "Not until I've had a chance to study them. And if that thing tears you apart the moment it's strong enough." Ilara watched as one of the cubs nuzzled against its mother, whimpering softly. The adult, despite its obvious pain, licked the cub's head in a gesture so reminiscent of earth mammals that Ilara felt a pang of empathy. "I'll take that chance," she said. An hour later, the medical transport hovered over the ravine. Getting the adult Crixus into the containment field required a carefully calibrated sedative and all the strength Ilara and the 2 technicians could muster. The cubs, surprisingly, followed willingly once they realized their mother was being moved. As they lifted off, Ilara caught sight of a Silurian observation post on a distant hill. A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the storm. They'd been seen. Back at the outpost, Ilara worked through the night, stabilizing the adult Crixus while keeping the cubs calm in an adjacent enclosure. She'd just administered the final round of regenerative therapy when the lab doors hissed open. Ambassador Thalzen of the Silurian Collective stood in the doorway, his fungoid body pulsing with colors that Ilara recognized as extreme agitation. Behind him, Garrus looked apologetic.